Oh my goodness, I really am live, I think. My goodness. I don't know. Sometimes it works straight away, sometimes it doesn't work at all, sometimes I have to change the browser. I don't know what that is all about. Today is Friday the 13th, a lucky day for some. Mercury turned retrograde, so that made itself known to me today. Well, difficulties I had since this afternoon to try and read you chapter 9 out of Life in Spirit by Harry Edwards. This was published in 1976. It was a hot summer, and it was published in Guildford by the Healer Publishing Company, Guildford in Surrey. This is Harry Edwards, and I'm just reading what he wrote, basically. Don't take any personal responsibility for this, I'm just reading it. Chapter 9, The Measure of Age and Change in Spirit. John and Mary, when sitting quietly together contemplating their garden, when John surprised Mary by asking her, "How long is it since we came together again?" Mary was puzzled for a moment or two, but reading John's mind, she replied, "I see you are trying to calculate this time on earthly scale. There are no weeks and years here. We recognize the passing of time when a change in anything can be noted." John looked at Mary as she explained this, and after a while he looked at her again and said, "You know, Mary, I have seen the change with you too, for you're looking so much younger and more lovely as each day passes." Mary smiled and her eyes shone with gladness as she received John's compliments. Then she looked at John and asked him, "Have you looked at yourself lately?" John shook his head and inwardly thought, "I don't remember looking in a mirror since I came here," and after a moment's further thought he said, "Do you know, we have not had a mirror anywhere in this house." "No," she replied. "Why do we need one? We see each other every day. There is no need for any kind of external means to record the physical attraction we have for each other, nor need we make any preparation for me to try and enhance myself in your eyes, for that would be hollow and unreal. This is one of the differences between us and earthly life, where a man has to protect a dear one against her being possessed by another, or for the lady to hold on to her husband's love by trying to make herself more attractive than she naturally is. We know each other more intimately than we did when we lived together before, for we are now so akin we can look into each other's soul, and we are happy in what we see." Mary went on to say, "When you take my hand, our sense of touch is so strong that it becomes a joining together of our life force, and there can be no greater intimacy than this. I'm going to find something for you." Mary went into the house to return with a small object, no bigger than the palm of a hand. It was burnished silver and covered with a transparent coating, which enabled reflection to be pure, deep, and penetrating. "Look at yourself in this," Mary asked John. He took it and looked at his reflection, showing marked amazement. "Is this me?" Mary nodded. "But I'm changed. I'm no older than I was in my 20s. My face is clear. My eyes look at me as if they're looking, but not believing what they see. I had long hair, but this is shorter. It looks alive, no longer streaky and dull." John went on, "I have not seen a hairdresser since I came. Why does it look so new? What has happened to us? We're so young again." It took Mary a little while to explain that As they were not now living in the physical dimension, they could not possess any characteristics which were the product of a physical way of life, and age and decay were two of these. In spirit, one loses all age symptoms and is transformed into the perfect, unblemished self. While this applied in spirit, it did not mean that every face would show peacefulness and happiness. The face could be as a barometer, showing the kind of person owning it. She went on to say that there are all kinds of people in spirit, contented and discontented, good people and evil ones. Happily, they do not mix, for kind likes to be with kind. There are those who are suffering the remorse of retribution for acts of conscious harm they were responsible for in their earthly life. John said he would like to talk about this later, for his mind was so occupied with the wonderful thought that one could not get old any more. Turning to Mary, he asked, "Do you mean we can stay here, just you and I in our house and garden, forever?" Mary paused for a while before answering, for she wanted John to find the answer to this question for himself, and he did. For before Mary spoke, John added, "But of course we must find something worthwhile to do to earn the happiness we are now enjoying." Mary was glad she had waited for John to find the answer, but there were a number of other questions he wanted an answer to. One of these was to the effect that John had seen children and even babies on their outings, and he wanted to know if they stayed just the same as they were or whether they grow up. So Mary had to explain that once a new life was formed, and this took place at conception in earth life as soon as a sperm's chromosomes joined with those within the egg, even though its span of physical life was but a moment, a new life would be born and would be received in spirit, where it would be cared for lovingly until it grew up to reach the prime of life now being enjoyed by John and Mary. Mary told John this was how this law governed all life, and with the animal kingdom too. With man, however, while his self portrayed his spiritual progression, wisdom and happiness, he would present himself as he wished. If he desired a beard, then he would. If he loved his body and wished it to convey strength and agility, then it could be so, and he could become muscular like Samson. This answered another of John's riddles. On a visit to the Temple of Nuclear Understanding, see the story already told in chapter 6, he found it difficult to understand why the professor of advanced subject appeared to have so juvenile an appearance, and he wondered how they could have acquired such great wisdom while so young. He also remembered in the same temple passing through an open room where a number of obviously venerable-looking man with a white beard, who carried with him an atmosphere of exceeding wisdom and authority. He obviously preferred this form of appearance to present his dignity and qualifications to those he taught. John began to study faces to see if he could find out for himself what kind of people these were, behind the personality they expressed. On one occasion a person was walking towards him, and John was impressed by the humanance which radiated from his whole being. There was a look of rapture on the face and forceful virility in his movements. This was one who had achieved spiritual progress, and with it wisdom. John hoped that one day he would be like this. As the man passed, their eyes met, and John drew courage from the encounter, as he was supposed to. Discussing this and other matters, John commented to Mary he had not seen any colored fingernails or signs of lipstick and eyeshadow. Mary explained he would only see these things with recent arrivals from Earth, who for a while continued to use cosmetics, for this was their habit, and they did not know any better. It was when they had become accustomed to the new order of things and knew they could not add to their own natural beauty by placing other colors and lines on their faces. They would see the futility of trying to make themselves better than they were. As the lines of physical weariness and age left them, and they became transformed to the state of contented fulfillment, so it was apparent there was no need for all the aids they once used to use. John was told of the quick transformations which happened when backward and violent people of a primitive, savage race arrived in spirit. They were guided into their own community, where they were met with others of the tribe who had preceded them. They arrived adorned with their habitual, frightening, war-paint grimaces. The one idea was to kill, and they were amazed into incredulity when they found they could not hurt anyone. They could recognize the features of their friends who had recently preceded them, and with more astonishment that they no longer wore the tribal war paint. There were no ferocious grimaces, and strangest of all, they were met with smiles. Perhaps it was the rules of life in the spirit dimension which were so totally opposed to the primitive savagery that the greatest difference was noticed in the rapidity of change from one standard to another. If John had been able to witness this, he would not have failed to observe the rapid feature change from extreme towards the opposite. From this, John wondered whether it would be a similar story when savage beasts like the tiger came to spirit life, or did they? He asked. If the tiger had no need to eat flesh, there would be no need for him to hunt, and perhaps it could be a case of the tiger with the proverbial lion lying down with a lamb. John had much more to learn about this later on. And here is a picture of Harry Edwards with Joanne and Ray Branch. I don't know whether you can see this, but I'll put it here anyway. And this was the end of chapter 9. Here's another picture of the beautiful gardens of Borrowsleigh, home of the Harry Edwards Spiritual Healing Sanctuary. That's in Surrey, and I don't live far from there, and I wonder whether it's still there. I have no idea. Chapter 10 is entitled Spiritual Progressions and Organizations. I have already read Life in the World Unseen, written by Victor Borgia, of a story of Robert Hugh Benson, who passed away in 1914. It's an actual account. Interesting. Quite a lot of similarity. Have a good Friday night, the 13th.